one and then two on the. All right, we're good. So welcome to the Throwing Hammers podcast. I have a special guest, Chris Topher from Combat Sports UK, right? Is the company that you work for?
Yeah, that's right. So my name is Chris Trafford. I work for Combat Sports UK, and I also cover journalism in my own capacity.
Yeah, perfect. So welcome, Chris. Really glad to have you on. Like I said, we had some interactions on Twitter and stuff like that, and I just really wanted to, see if we can get you on and really like your content. I like the stuff you've been putting out there. And like I said, we just kind of started our MMA journey on Twitter and covering things that we like or whatever. But what's excited to have you on because you were just in Orlando. Did you get back yesterday or?
Yeah, I have the shirt to prove it. I
Sweet.
just got back yesterday night. Yeah, it was just a quick 1-day trip. I flew in Saturday morning. I flew out Sunday morning. Got to partake in some fight watching down in the arena, and afterwards I stayed in the fighter hotel. Ended super late, so there wasn't really any shenanigans going on. I did meet Tai Tuivasa, which was cool, and Mark Diakase, but
Yeah.
it was a pretty tame weekend for me overall. I've seen much more shenanigans.
That's good. Yeah, that's the thing about this card. I was, I thought it was in my head. I had it starting at 6, and then I'm like, oh no, it starts at 7, and then I turn it on at 7, and they're ready to go. Like they're rolling out the first fight right away. I mean, it was crazy pace they were keeping up. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree. 14 fights. And there were 7 finishes. The entire main card was all finishes. But imagine if that didn't happen, right? Imagine if they all went to decision, how long that would have taken. I got out of there at like 2 a.m. and that was with 7 straight finishes to round out the main card. So
yeah, you're right. I mean, it was crazy. Plus there were 7 fights on the main card, right? I mean,
which is totally weird.
Right.
Actually, they ran out of time on the prelims. So that's why they pushed Nico Price, who was originally headlining prelims. They had him open up the main card, and it still took forever. That was my only complaint about the event, though. It was an awesome event, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's so much different. I mean, these fight nights that are in actual arenas with fans and all that. I mean, it's so much different than watching at the Apex or whatever. And there's like 100 fans there or whatever it is, 200. I don't even know, but
or Mark Zuckerberg only.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Unless somebody buys out the Apex.
Yeah.
That's too funny. But yeah, I thought overall, I mean, this was a great card. I mean, obviously, top to bottom, we knew there was going to be some great fights, great matchups, and some decent bigger names on a fight night card, which we haven't seen really probably in a couple months. I mean, we had some kind of snoozers in September and October, but I was super excited for this one. I mean, definitely had a pay-per-view feel, I thought, and it was like, just really, really bigger names, and it really stood up to the test, I thought,
Yeah, I agree. In terms of quality of the card, I would put it up there, almost pay-per-view level, certainly better than some pay-per-views. Like if you're looking at UFC 282 this weekend, in terms of name value, I would say that last weekend's card, UFC Fight Night Orlando, is probably going to end up being a more memorable card than what's going to happen this weekend. But watch, as I said that this weekend card is a banger. But it was awesome event. There was another sold out event for the UFC. That's 22 in a row now. So, I mean, if that's an argument for stopping fights at the Apex or at least limiting them, then I don't know what is. That was also the most or let me say this. It was the biggest gate in UFC Fight Night history. I think Dana is going to take a look at that. And I actually heard on the grapevine that there's going to be a lot more of the UFC going out and leaving the Apex in 2023. A lot of them doing all the fights at the Apex this year is still a holdover from COVID, but now that those restrictions are largely ended, let's look forward to seeing a lot more fight nights like what happened this weekend, because it was amazing. The energy in the crowd was great.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like obviously the Apex served its purpose during COVID and even still, I mean, there's still obviously great fights in there, but I've been seeing a lot of discussion also about how, the ring size of the Apex is so much smaller than the regular ring. And, just recently that's been coming up in some different, tweets and podcasts I've been seeing, but I mean, it's really a thing where, why don't they just have the ring the same size? It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, but it is what it is. I mean, when you guys, you got guys like, I mean, Derek Lewis fought in the Apex. I mean, guys like that in that smaller ring. I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think DC versus Stipe was in the Apex, that 25-foot ring as opposed to the 30-foot ring. Those big boys banging in there, it's like rock'em sock'em robots right away. And
Yeah.
we saw this weekend, Wonder Boy needs space to get off with his karate stance. He had the bigger ring this weekend, and when he's able to do what his advantages are, you can really see fireworks in his performance, which was what we saw last night with that bigger,
Yeah.
bigger,
Yeah.
bigger cage.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of what I was leading up to is like those guys needed the room. I mean, they were all around the ring all the time. You know what I mean? Circling and whatever. And I just thought this fight, it was just awesome. I mean, I know people are saying fight of the year or stuff like that. I wouldn't go that far, but it's more like we really saw Wonder Boy at his best, I thought. I mean, it was like the stance, the perfect matchup for him on the, a guy that fights on the feet that doesn't really want to fight on the ground, was more of a stylistic matchup that we thought it was going to be. And it turned out that it was, he was on full display right there.
Yeah, and so was Holland, right? Classic styles make fights match up. We had karate with Wonder Boy versus Kevin Holland striking his kung fu style. Really, really was an instant classic. I agree with you that it's in the running for fight of the year. I've seen quite a few fights live this year, so maybe I would put fights like Khamzat Chimaev versus Gilbert Burns in 273, which I was there. I would say that's also in the running. I was at UFC Long Island. I saw Matt Schnell versus Sumujeri. Amazing comeback. One of my fights of all time, if not my favorite fight of all time. And that I don't say that lightly. That fucking fight was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, we have Glover versus Jiri. I watched that at home, jumping out of the bed.
Yep.
Glover jumped guillotine in the fifth round.
Yep.
Pulled guard rather. But hey, Wonder Boy versus Holland is right up there. Maybe it's 4, maybe it's 5. We had Gamrot versus Arukian, which was fireworks. That was a dog fight. A couple of lightweights fighting like they're flyweights, but it's up there.
Yeah.
Holland versus Wonder Boy was a real classic for as long as it lasted. I wish that Holland didn't hurt his knuckles. I watched it live, so I didn't really see the tape, but apparently he broke 3 of his knuckles, and that certainly impacted his game. I thought initially when he was keeping that right arm up, he was doing it because of Wonder Boy throwing his array of kicks, and a lot of them were landing to the head. And I thought when I was watching the fight live that's why he was keeping that right hand up guarding the head. But I think it was really because he had no power in it anymore. So he, with his broken knuckles, he was using it as solely a shield and not a sword.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even with that, it was a great fight, right?
Yeah, and I think I read today that the break actually happened in the first round. I mean, he caught Wonder Boy, really solid, that's what I was wondering, right? I mean, Wonder Boy's going to look good until he gets hit, and we all know like leading up to the fight that Holland has that power, and it's like he catches somebody with that right hand. I mean, and you saw it in the first round. I mean, he landed that right hand that ended up hurting his hand, but I mean, you saw that Wonder Boy was taken aback by that for sure.
Yeah, I watched the post fight TV show with Michael Chiesa, and he didn't think that the break happened with a headshot. He thought it was maybe defending a kick or something. So we'll see. We'll probably watch the fight 1,000 more times and see really where the break came. I doubt that even the fighter knows unless he watches it back, just because it happens so quickly. You don't really can have time to take inventory sometimes.
Yeah.
But in
But
any case,
yeah, and I'm sure that even if it happened with the punch, I mean, it still didn't feel good when he when he was blocking all those kicks. I mean, it was crazy, you know.
yeah,
But I mean, that fight was incredible. I just, I mean, all credit to Kevin Holland. I mean, incredible how tough the guy is, right? I mean, how many punches to the face and kicks to the head can you take? And I
yeah.
felt really bad for him in that fourth round, was just kind of propping himself up against the cage and couldn't really return fire too well.
Yeah, and I'm happy it ended when it did. A lot of times in MMA, we have these corners that are so proud that they don't let the fighter get out while he still can before getting a more serious injury. Now he gets to live to fight another day, which is great. Kevin Holland didn't have it by the end of that fight. He was compromised. He was just going to take more damage. So good job by that corner for ending the fight when it should have been ended. I'd
Yeah.
like to. How was it? How was that corner treatment during the fight? Were they aware of that injury? Were they talking about it between rounds with the fighter, or do you have any
Yeah, I
insight as
don't
to that? Because I didn't watch the
Yeah,
fights.
I don't know. It was kind of hard to tell because they weren't really staying with the corners too much during the broadcast because they were trying to sneak in commercials, I think, because the pace was so high. It was like they were just trying to get commercials in wherever they could, I think. But it was but I don't know, I didn't hear too much chatter. But I know the announcers, DC was definitely saying that they could tell something was up with the right hand, by
Okay.
I think it was by the second round. I think by the second round they could, that was their analysis, was there must be something up with the right hand. So they kind of noticed it, but I don't know. We didn't hear too much from the corner at all, I don't think. So I mean,
In any case, exemplary job by the corner. That's something that we should highlight when they do the right thing, because so many times we hear the opposite story of the fighter wanting to quit and the team doesn't let them, or the team just lets them go too far. So this was a good stoppage in any case.
yeah,
And it's a shame that we didn't get to see Holland have that same energy in rounds 2 through 4 as we did in one. But hey, fights happen, and you go into every fight injured to a certain extent, and you battle through injuries all the time. So
yeah,
unlucky break for Holland, but he's a real warrior, and he showed a lot of grit last night. He's not a quitter. He'll be back stronger. Just not his night in the office.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's the whole thing. Like you said, you never know what's going to happen with a fight, but I mean, obviously this was just a great fight and a great matchup, and it was something the UFC really kind of needed from these guys after their last couple fights. I mean, these guys obviously are not wrestlers, and their last couple fights, it was like they kind of got dominated on the ground and pushed up against the cage and couldn't get off or whatever. But it was really, kind of the matchup that we all wanted to see, really, so it was good. It was good.
100%, 100%. They
Yeah.
did good. They did good by the fighters. Holland, as we remember, retired after the Chimaev fight very briefly. Got what he wanted. He got himself a headlining match against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson last weekend at UFC Orlando. Wonderboy, on the other hand, had two straight losses to grapplers, where Gilbert Burns just held him down for 5 rounds, and he survived, but he wasn't able to get any of his shots off. And he had a second loss too. Uh, he specifically told Dana that he wanted to fight some strikers. I heard some chatter that he's still looking to fight some strikers. We got to see with Wonder Boy if he really is serious about getting a shot at the belt. He's 39 years old. He'll be 40 in February. He's going to have to go through some grapplers again. But for now, I'm very happy giving him some more exciting fights, have him headlining another fight night if that's what it's going to be, or at least, being a featured fight on a pay-per-view. There's just too many fighters right now above him that are grappling heavy and also are deserving of a title shot. So I don't think that Wonder Boy is going to be able to leapfrog Kamaru Usman to fight Leon Edwards, for
Yeah.
instance.
Yeah. Or even Bilal again, or
Well,
Covington. I mean, there's a lot of those guys are all wrestlers. And I agree. Anybody above him right now in the rankings, I mean, it's a tough matchup for him. And I don't see that happening. And maybe he ends up being being the higher gatekeeper of that division or something. Maybe he fights John Brady. Who knows? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
One of the, but whatever. I mean, he's obviously like, for me, I loved it. Like, I loved seeing the classic Wonder Boy. I love that wide stance. I love that bouncing up and down, back and forth. You know what I mean? And it was awesome to see, for sure.
Yeah, we saw a vintage Wonder Boy last night. I don't know if he's realistically going to have another shot at the title. I'm more than happy giving him these exciting fights. He had a shot against Shavkat Rakhmonov, who's many people think is going to be the future of the UFC.
Yeah.
Ranked 10 right now. Wonder Boy's ranked 6. Wonder Boy turned down that fight. There's good fights that are in the lower ranks that Wonder Boy can exploit to have his fighting ability promoted. We'll have to see who that is. I heard chatter of Jorge Masvidal, a little bit of Conor McGregor. I don't know how likely that would be, but there's still a good purpose for Wonder Boy. He had his 2 title shots against Woodley. He came up short, unfortunately, unlucky, but that doesn't mean that he's ready to get set out to pasture from the UFC, so to say. There's still a good, valuable purpose that Wonder Boy can serve in that higher gatekeeper role. And it should be noted that being a gatekeeper in the UFC, the most elite fighting organization on the planet right now, that's something to be proud of. A lot of times gatekeeping is like a pejorative term, but I think that's a generally positive note that we should be happy if Wonder Boy serves.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, that means he's, it's like those guys are still one of the best in the division, right? I mean, you got to get past the best to fight the best, right? I guess.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that works. But yeah, so great fight. And so how was the crowd there? I mean, it seemed like they were very into it. It seemed like a lively crowd. It seemed like they were there from the beginning too, which isn't always the case, right? I mean, people stroll in for the main event and kind of ditch the prelims, which I never understood, but it seemed like they were there from the get-go, so.
Yeah, no, it was a totally rocking event. Florida fans are bonkers. I was down here for UFC 273, and it was the same type of vibe. Florida just loves their sports. Florida loves their fighters. And like you said, from the very first fight, they were in there up in the nosebleeds. You had fans in attendance, really appreciating the fact that the UFC is leaving the Apex and coming down to these cities that they don't hit too often. So in terms of the feeling in the arena, it was a magical night, and I'm happy that energy transferred itself to live TV. Sometimes you really can't feel the energy, but from the reviews on last week's event, everyone loved the UFC, so I'm glad that they captured that magic on camera.
Yeah, they really did, and it was like I said, the fights were coming out so frantically. It's like I feel like we didn't get the usual like, hey, here's some guy, here's the fighters row in the crowd or whatever. We didn't get a lot of that.
Like it starts at 7, and then there's like 20 minutes or 30 minutes before the first fight. It didn't happen that way.
Right, exactly. It was more like fight after fight. Like I couldn't even go to the bathroom. I was like, I got to go to the bathroom. I feel like I can't even get up and get a beer and go to the bathroom. It was more like, holy cow, these fights are rolling out. It was a little more evenly paced once the main card started, but man, those prelims were just like boom, boom, boom. Like some of these guys didn't even get interviewed. Like Clay Guida didn't even get an interview after his fight.
Oh, that's right. He didn't.
He didn't. And it's funny if you watch the broadcast back, he says, "Where's the microphone?" Like he had something to say, like he was planning on saying something, and he was like, "Where's the microphone?" So it was super funny to see that, but it was just like, man, yeah. From a selfish point of view, though, I was like, "Come on, man, give me a break." I'm like, I gotta go to the bathroom.
That's too funny.
So it was good, but yeah, it was a good card all around. I mean, RDA really took care of Barberena. I mean, there was kind of no contest there. And I mean, obviously one of the all-time greats in Dos Anjos, and he showed it. I mean, he just dominated a weaker fighter. And, that's kind of the story of that one in my book,
Yeah, he was a lot higher. The odds, let me say this, the odds were heavily in RDA's favor against Brian Barberena. I was personally a little bit more skeptical. Barberena is an exciting fighter. He's a little bit unpredictable, but RDA is getting a little bit long in the tooth. So I was wondering when Father Time might catch up to RDA, but it certainly wasn't last night. He was in his regular form. I think that move up to 170 pounds from 55 did good to him. And that's another fighter that can be, a gatekeeper, so to say, just like Wonder
Yeah.
Boy, and in the best of ways that I say that term too.
Yeah.
RDA still has a lot to offer the UFC. He's a former champion, and he should be getting good fights with good matchups instead of just fighting the murderer's row of what the UFC has to offer him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he realizes too, it's for him, it's more of, let's get the exciting fights. I mean, he's not going to make a title run, and then him calling out Connor at the end. I mean, that was, who knows about that, I mean, obviously everybody's calling out Connor these days, but it's like, who knows who he's gonna come back and finally fight. But I mean, RDA, they never got to do it. So why not that? I mean, anything's possible, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, well, the narrative's there, right? They were supposed to fight in 2016. They were even scheduled to fight. RDA broke his foot 2 weeks before the fight. He unjustly got his belt stripped away from him, in my opinion. Connor ends up winning the interim belt. Then he becomes a world champion, global superstar that he is today. And RDA has been having that feeling a long time. And maybe it is time for the matchup. I don't know if Connor will accept it, but I think it was a good call out for sure.
Yeah, and you look at, not to get off on a Connor tangent, but I mean, you look at really who does he really want to fight and what are his objectives, right? I mean, is he coming back to make a title run or is he coming back just to have exciting fights, And does he really want to come back and fight a guy like Michael Chandler? I don't think so. I know that's just my opinion, but
I
I
don't
don't
see him
know.
coming back at 55, Connor.
Yeah. Yeah.
With all the gear he may or may not be on and just the size that he's put on during his time away from the game, I can't see him shriveling up back down to 155. I can't believe he used to make 45. He used
I
to look like
know.
Skeletor.
He did. That one picture is so, I always, that comes up in my camera roll sometimes, that picture when he was at 145. I'm like, holy cow, it doesn't even look like him. Doesn't even look like him.
The picture of him at the weigh-in with all
Yeah.
sunken in the skeleton
Yeah.
and he's screaming.
Yeah. 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 I know.
Yeah.
It's
And how is
nuts.
that guy who's we see now?
Yeah, exactly. How's that guy this guy, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, some of those pictures, it's like, holy cow. But yeah, so who knows what's up for him. But I thought Nicolau, I mean, how impressive was he? Matt Schnell, obviously tough character, but I mean, Nicolau, he looks like the real deal, right? I mean, you got to give him his credit where credit's due, and he looked amazing, I thought.
Yeah, I think he looked great. Matt Shell's a very strong, tough opponent. He, like I said, was in perhaps the fight of the year earlier this year at UFC Long Island. To beat a fighter of that caliber says a lot, especially when you're doing it in the featured bout of UFC Orlando. Granted, Schnell had some weight issues. He had to shave his head to make 126, but hey, let's tip our cap to Nicolau. We have a true contender in 125. With everything that's going on down there, there's a lot of exciting fighters. They're about to do Figgy Moreno 4. So to inject Nicolau into that narrative down at 25 is a very fresh insertion of energy that I look forward to seeing what's going to happen there.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Because I think he'd give either of those guys a run for their money, I think. I mean, he looks like, a guy that's a true contender in my book, looks really good.
Yeah, oftentimes you don't see 125 pounders have that real knockout power. Like I said, Schnell was a little bit disadvantaged from his weight cut. So who knows whether the knockout was due to that poor weight cut. Maybe he didn't get all the water back into his brain. But in any case, Nicolau got the round 2 knockout. So certainly he has knockout power that he can bring to a lot of the fights in the flyweight division.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, I love watching Tai Tuivasa fight, but man, I mean, he was just overmatched. Sergey was just, this guy has unbelievable power, and it was just on display. I mean, and I just thought, like, you usually see Tai come back after getting hit a couple times. I mean, obviously he throws right back, and he was having trouble just throwing back. I mean, it was difficult for him.
Yeah, we were trying to hope that Ty would be able to weather the storm and make it out of the first round, but Sergey Pavlovich wasn't having it. He has so much power behind his punches that he just really folded Ty. Unfortunately, another rough night at the office for Ty, having his second loss in about 10 weeks. So
Yeah.
he needs to retool if he's serious about making a title run in the heavyweight division. He said he fights for the money and he wants prize fights. So that could be another gatekeeper role for him. But I think it's too early to say that. I think after this long extended break he's going to take, he can come back retooled. I don't know if he's going to be able to beat a Pavlovich. I think Pavlovich can be the next heavyweight champion of the world, certainly after what we saw last weekend. But let's not discount Ty over a couple bad fights. He's had losing streaks in the past, and he's leveled up to crack off 5 straight wins. And in the heavyweight division, all it takes is one punch. You know,
Yeah.
I saw last
Yeah.
night too.
Yeah. I mean, you look back at the Gon fight, right, with Tuivasa and how he survived the onslaught from Gon. I mean,
Yeah.
that was amazing. It was just a great fight all around. But I mean, he was just taking some shots like back and forth. But I mean, that kind of tells you like that might be a power difference there between and an accuracy difference between Gon and Sergey. I mean, it was, you can be as powerful as you want, but if you're not connecting directly, that's the other story. You know what I mean? So I feel like, Sergey connected and was powerful.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. You know, Gon in the if we're looking back at UFC Paris with the Gon into Avasa fight, there was times where Ty got in the fight, even almost put Gon out. He didn't let full bore and it ended fighting him because he got finished on because Gon got back in the fight. But you did not see that at all with Pavlovich from the first
Right.
strike zone, throwing punches, coming off balance. You didn't really have any answer for pure of his punches, whereas he was to get back into the fight and weather the storm with Gon.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I totally agree. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. And I think Sergey, I mean, I'd love to see Sergey fight Gon, to be honest. I mean, that's could be the next step for him, maybe, but I don't, who knows? I mean, you never know what the UFC is going to do, but that would be a great matchup I'd like to see, and I think the fans would like to see it also.
Yeah, so if we're looking at what happened with Gon, he lost the title fight to Ngannou. After that, he bounced back, beat Tai Tuivasa. That was back in September, so I think he's looking for a fight. He should be ranked second or third right now. We have the champion Francis Ngannou. He's looking to, I think, going to re-sign and defend the belt. So that'll probably be against Stipe, who's also ranked above Pavlovich. It could be John Jones in a crazy super fight, but there's not really anyone above Pavlovich right now besides Gon.
Right.
Coming into this fight, Pavlovich was ranked 5th. Tuivasa was ranked 4th. So let's say he takes Tuivasa's slot and Ngannou probably fights Stipe or Jones. That leaves 2 options for Pavlovich if he's going to fight up in the rankings and prepare himself for a title shot. That leaves only Gon, perhaps Stipe. I don't know if Stipe would even accept that fight, but let's call that a viable option.
Yeah.
He's really close to the top. I know he had a couple years off. I think it was due to injury, but he's with this fight now has 5 round 1 knockouts in a row. I think the only fight he lost in the UFC was to Alistair Overeem in his debut. He's still young. He's 27 years old. So after that loss, he's just rattled off 5 straight round 1 knockouts, which is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
He has power to knock out anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's crazy. So, but yeah, I mean, the rest of the card, I mean, is there any other fights you'd specifically want to talk about? I mean, we don't have to go over everyone, but I mean, I thought Phil Rowe was very impressive. I mean, that was a good fight. And I thought that, I thought Nico had him there, and then it just completely turned around, but that was a great fight. I mean, all these were great fights, but that one specifically I thought was really good.
Yeah, that was a really good fight. That fight that was featuring the featured pre. They moved into in card.
Yeah.
Couple players. Phil Rose actually from Orlando. The crowd was really behind him strongly. Happy he got the win, especially with his speech. His mother's battling two different types of cancer and is going through chemotherapy. So that's why she. But Phil said, his mom has a bulletproof mind, and he has that same mind. So with battling through adversity, we know that Nico was coming back in the second round. It was a back and forth bout, but Phil weathered the storm. He never gave up. He, by round 3, dominated the fight, controlled Nico, just have anything left by the end of the night. His gas tank ran out, and Phil emerged victorious. Good
Yeah.
win for him. Great
Yeah.
fight, great exciting fight.
Yeah, it was. And then, we had Angela Hill was very dominant, I thought. She looked really good. Clay Guida got another win. I mean, that guy Clay seems like he fights every 3 weeks. It's like he's always on the card, it seems like.
I think that was 60th
Yeah.
professional fight.
Yeah.
Totally outrageous. I think is a Hall of Famer fight. All one. I like that fight because it was against a fellow veteran. That was Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman's last fight in the UFC. He retired.
Yeah.
12-13 fight UFC veteran. I like that matchup. I think the UFC should be doing more of that. Legends division, people call it. I'm throwing around that term as well. These aging fighters, we don't have to always feed them to our young to keep engine moving. We can have legend versus legend in these exciting fights. Clay Guida versus Scott Holtzman was one of those.
Yeah.
Like, if you remember back in 9, Diaz versus Ferguson, and the UFC really got lucky, but with that matchup at the end of the day, because originally supposed to fight Khamzat Chimaev, which was totally one-sided. People were about not even buying the card, but at the very last minute, we know what happened. They shifted the fight. Kevin Holland even fought on that card.
Yeah.
We got what we wanted the entire time, which was Nate Diaz fighting another legend.
Yeah.
Here with Guida versus Holtzman, and I'm happy about that for sure. They should do more of that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I mean, that's really what, and it's, there's so many young, really good young fighters coming up that you're right. They don't always have to fight these aging legends, you know what I mean? And it's kind of scary for some of these guys. I'm scared for him. I was scared for Nate when he was like, I'm like, Jesus, I hope he doesn't get really hurt against Chimaev.
Yeah. That standard, we were like, is this the first UFC fatality? Are we about to
I know
see this?
that is
But
like
it was so one-sided.
that was super scary, but you're right. Good to see that. I was great. Really happy for Michael Johnson also. He seemed like, that was a great fight. I know that the Kazi was landing all these crazy, doing these crazy spin kicks and, really moves that were flamboyant. But in the end, I mean, Michael Johnson just landed the better, more accurate, strikes and higher volume of strikes against him. And I thought it was I was one of those where I was like, I hope the judges don't screw this one up because, it was really clear to me that Michael Johnson won the fight, but you could see it where somebody thought, because of all those crazy moves and flamboyant stuff that the Kazi was really, in the lead, but I didn't think so. So
Yeah, it's always good to get a win to see Michael Johnson. The judge 30-27, 29-28, like the other two judges. Yeah, Michael Johnson trades wins and losses a lot. Another veteran that, in this case, fought a young up-and-comer in Diakase, the English. And it could be a different way, but Johnson, true to his form, had a strong performance. Very good to see that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. All right, well, I don't want to keep you forever, but really great meeting you. And is there any other fights you want to touch on or anything else from UFC Orlando that you want to give a little insight on? And I thought it was great that you got to be there. I saw the amazing food you were sampling and what was that? Was that like a press room or something that they had, or what was that about?
No, so this time I wasn't going as a credentialed journalist. I was up in the Legends Suites, which
Okay.
highly recommend getting unlimited food and drink and then sitting down and watch fights from a suite.
Gotcha.
Wasn't too expensive, and it was good. That we covered definitely the major fights. We
Yeah.
gave our love to the Florida fans. Talked about how we want to see the UFC at least start leaving the Apex and having more fights because they made a ton of money. Their 22nd consecutive sold out event. So I think there's going to be a lot more traveling next year. So if you Orlando study, 10 out of 10, and UFC is going to be looking at when they're picking fights next year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was, an electric crowd, and it's a great. I mean, Orlando is always, it's just a great town, great tourist town, and we go down there, go to Disney a lot and stuff like that. It's just a great place to be. You know what I mean? So it's amazing. So, but definitely, wanted to connect and really thank you for coming on. I mean, this really is great to finally talk to you and get your insight on things. And I had the idea. I saw you were going down there. I'm like, it'd be great to talk to him right after he goes down to the fights. I mean, that was awesome. So really great to have you on, and want to thank you again. So
thanks for the opportunity. Hopefully we can do it again sometime, either before or after fights.
Yeah, definitely. So let's plan on that. And people can follow you on Twitter. What was I don't know your Twitter handle offhand, but maybe you can say that. And then any other places to follow you, just let us know.
Yeah, thanks for the plug. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is Chris's CASE handle. You can find me on YouTube. My channel is at Chris's YouTube. You can find me on Insta. My IG is at Chris's Insta. It's all Chris's CHRISES. So it should be easy to find me if you're looking for me.
Yeah, perfect. Well, once again, thank you. And I'll post all that in the show notes, all the links to your accounts and things like that. And then we'll get it out there. We'll probably, get it out there tomorrow or whatever. But so good stuff, Chris. I appreciate you coming on, man. It's awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
I'll talk to you soon. Peace. Man. All right, see ya.
Bye.
1 and then 2 on the.